So what did we do last time? I think last time we tried folding long lines, right?
I think so.
Right.
I had bad network connected, so I couldn't stay for the whole thing.
So there were some changes. So let's see, function definite. So compound statement, which is just a long list of individual cases, got converted into there we go. This, which is more readable than if you scroll, but I don't think we need all these. Well, we probably don't need these parentheses here. It would be nice to get this to the format that the definition uses, but that's not something that Sphinx really allows. So that would mean redefining the Sphinx directive for these. Probably not worth it. So this is where that is now. Now then, for subject expression, which just has two cases, let's look how that works here. So that's very similar. It's just two cases. Again, probably more readable than before. Then what do we have here? Closed pattern. There's a lot of cases. Literal pattern, like for these lists of simple cases, this is working really well. Sequence pattern, it's the same thing. And parameters here, that's yeah, that's a bit different. Still in here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Still in this file. Yeah, so for parameters, this needs a bit more line breaking. But I guess for the top level structure is fine.
I always forget. I'm sorry. Thanks, Blaze, for reminding me.
Hello. Start you see type param is probably fine. Atom looks great. And then have primary, T primary, which could be better in the future. Slice, args, lambda params is still a mess. Simple statement is perfect. Augmented assign is probably too long. Star atom looks good. Yeah, I think so. Most of these are an improvement. But what we want to do now, or what I want to do now, is look at the other lines that are too long. There's a screen full of them. And do something about them. So I guess the worst offender is here in lambda params.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Your microphone's very low. I couldn't really hear you.
Hello, test. Test. Is it better?
Is it just me?
Oh, sure. Hopefully this is
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks. So, what was the question?
I asked if default was a keyword, or if I was reading that incorrectly.
No. Default is a rule in the grammar.
Ah, okay.
Default is the grammar. Let's see where we can find these lambda params. Either here or in simple statements. No, in expressions. Lambda is an expression, of course. Right, so these are lambda parameters. The most horrible piece of syntax. And so we split that out into a choice between everything or lambda star etc, which of course has pretty much the same treatment. And another bad thing about this is there's this lambda slash with default rule, which has a very long name, so there's not a lot of space for the rest of the grammar here. So maybe this is a very good use case for line wrapping. So
Line wrapping with parens is not fun.
I know, right? Have you ever tried?
No, I don't want to. I've seen it up with it. I've never messed with it. This just looks complicated by itself.
Yeah, I also haven't really messed with this. Also the diagrams are really unreadable. Anyway, so this is just too long.
Why is that so long? Isn't it just a regular parameter-less rule without the parentheses?
Yes, but well, parameters are just the most complicated pieces of Python grammar, it turns out. Because you can have start arguments, and you can have keyword arguments, and you can have defaults with some of those and not with others. And you can skip some of those or not, and they're separated by commas, except you can leave out the final comma. So instead of a comma separator or a comma terminator everywhere, we have this look ahead, right? That's this part that doesn't really help. Maybe that should get its own name, like comma or end. Yeah. So here it says you can have a name, comma, as many times as you want, and then you have a slash, and their comma. Excuse me?
That seems excessive. Even lambdas can have slash parameters? That seems excessive for the parameter.
Well, yeah, they can. Alright, this is just a copy of the function grammar with the paren changed for the colon. And I'm.
Why is the regular function grammar also this messy?
Let's see, do we have function definitions? Oh yeah. Yes, it is. It has much of the same structure, except instead of the colon, these end with the ending parentheses. Yeah.
What could we do? I guess we could separate out each of these branches into a separate rule, and you just post them in sequence after
Like
you know, like you have a high level definition for
like
the thing.
this one is repeated a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you get like a slight variation with the default value here and here. I guess what would help most is if there was some way to consolidate. Right. So this branch here, well, this is the same as the start here, so I guess this part could just be optional and we could get rid of this branch here. And this part is the same, but here it's optional.
What's the difference between the top first block and the bottom one?
I mean this one
Yeah, this block and
and that
the
one?
bottom one. Yeah.
Well, there's no difference, except this one is followed by a lot of other stuff.
Wait, there is a difference. There is a little rectangle.
Oh yeah, this can be repeated. No. Oh, default. Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this one is the same as that one.
I see.
And so what this means is you can have defaults with the parameters, but the ones with the defaults need to come after any ones that don't have the defaults. Right. Most of the lambda star DC and this lambda star DC, they're the same, which essentially means all of this is optional and you can go right here. But if you go right here, then this lambda star etc is not optional. Yeah, so this is just mess. It's probably better to describe this in prose.
Is it an option to just make this image a lot larger than the others? And read what's inside it?
Not really. We'd have to split it up somehow. Well, I guess we could take the lambda slash with default and put it into its own diagram, which would make it a little smaller. Anyway, so right now I wanted to look at the text representation though. So the top level structure here is a choice, which puts the lambda star etc at its own line, and then this giant mess here on its own line. And this giant mess is a sequence that has a very big choice and then an optional lambda star etc. So I guess to split this big thing, what we need to do is to split this. So it is a sequence. So I guess the sequence, if it needs to be split, needs to look at each of its elements and then maybe try to split the biggest one. Like what? what would be the algorithm here? What we could do is like put each of the items on its own line, but that won't really help too much.
Let's see if there is any grammar consolidation algorithms.
Like for line wrapping?
Not for like separating knowledge.
Splitting the biggest one certainly sounds like a good idea, but I wouldn't know how to do it.
Yeah, so if we split this biggest one, it'll become something like so it's this. This or this. Right, and that the lambda star etc can go after this parentheses here. But then that leaves us with this big part here, which again is a giant sequence, which has the choice here and then something small there. So again, I guess we would need to split this big one. And that would get split here and here. I got lost. Yeah, let's do that again. So this sequence needs to be, in this sequence we need to split this big part here. And this big part here is as a choice. So I guess it would get split like this. Now these parentheses are redundant. So that would get split like that, but then again this line is too big, and that is also a sequence with a choice and something else. So here this choice would get split, and that has the name here and lambda slash with default, or this part, and that's done, I guess. Then maybe this sequence needs to be split. It's almost at the line length. So what would get split there? Maybe the biggest element of it.
Yeah, I think so.
How would you split?
I know, it's tricky. The name, maybe?
Well, I guess there's two ways to split a sequence. Either you could look inside the parentheses and try to
Oh, I see.
put that
Right.
on different lines, or do a line break at one of these points in the sequence. Which is
Yeah,
better?
I guess intuitively, well, probably expanding the parentheses, like looking within the parentheses, like treating that first name. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? Something like that. Well, oh, uh, that's okay. I would have thought, I would have thought treating it like the one 3 lines down, like putting the closing parenthesis on the previous line. But, oh, I see. Okay. Like having that be an object, and then the plus would be on the following line.
Like this?
Is that something like that?
I'd like the plus to be with the parentheses here.
I see. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, well, I guess if one of the items in the sequence is a choice, then that's a good candidate to split out.
It is. Yes, it is.
Or maybe if the first thing in the in the sequence is a choice, it's a good candidate to split out.
Yeah.
Huh. How many of those are like that? Sequence, here's a sequence. Okay, if we look at class pattern. So the first thing here is a choice, but it's not the best thing to split out, I guess. I don't even know what I would do here.
Well, will any of these attempts of ours work?
What do you mean by attempts?
In other words, attempts meaning like these breaks.
Well, I could do
that one.
I could do this one, like splitting the the first choice of a sequence. I mean that
That's
with all these indents and stuff, it would be fiddly, but that could work. But for this line, I don't even see the algorithm. I don't see how I would split it.
What you could do is you could isolate a subsequence and give it a name.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
Where to stop from here, because that's not clear.
yeah. With the simplification, we went the other way, right?
Yes.
We went
But
to
now it's a control.
inline stuff.
It's not new cell button right.
So yeah, we could do that. Of course, the problem is what to choose for the name. Can't really guess. Let me look at class pattern in the original grammar. Right, so this is completely different. Are we simplifying too much?
That could be it, actually. Maybe we can mark some rules as being unsimplified. Like in snippets,
Like class pattern?
Yeah. Because some rules do need the redundancy to be remotely readable.
Yeah, on the other hand, the diagram looks better if it's simplified.
True. True.
Ah, so do we need two different kinds of simplification?
No, I think that would only make things worse.
Keyword pattern.
Dear.
I feel like I'm back in school.
See, the problems you get at school have the distinct advantage that they're solvable.
Yes, exactly.
Here, it's not certain. And yeah, giving this part a name
Yeah.
would work. I mean, maybe we can change the grammar to do that. What's this? A class pattern. So, not really. There's positional patterns, keyword patterns. So yeah, so this part right here, that's okay. So the sequence looks at its biggest element and tries to split that up. Right, so here the only thing that it needed is to put the parenthesis on the starting line, and then the inside of the parenthesis on the next line, and the closing on the line afterwards. Right, and that would probably be enough to break somewhere here. How much space do we have? Yeah, there's a lot of space now. So maybe that's the trick. Look at the longest element in the sequence and try to break there.
I guess. I mean,
Let's see how that would work in the other ones. So in this elif statement, I guess that would try to break here, which is not perfect. In the for statement, it would probably try to break up star expressions, which it can't. So it would need to look for other ones. Try statement, that would try to break up this one, which I guess is good. And with statement would do this one, that would probably work. Okay.
oh, does that work?
Yeah, I guess that's something that will work, and it's even compatible with what we did before. I'm just not sure if I can convert it into code right away, but yeah, that's probably the way to go. So let's see, what would the algorithm be if we go back to the lambda params? Oh, it's an expression, right? So the algorithm is, when we try to break up a sequence, we look at the longest element of that sequence that's not been broken up yet, and try to break that up. Wow. Okay. Doesn't sound that easy, but at least it's something to think about. So okay, so just to get in the code, back in the code. So choice now has this format lines, and we need something similar for sequence, right? So to format lines, we get the columns, we get the single line format. If that fits, then everything's fine. If it does not fit, then okay, maybe let's look at what format does. It does format for precedence for each item, and then joins that with spaces, which is easy enough. Let's try one thing first, and that would be to just break up everything in the sequence. How would that work? There's Yeah, I guess there's one complication in that we really want to join multiple items on a single line, right? So if we try to break up everything, we let's take if we try to break out every piece of this sequence, it would be something like this. Right, where we ask this choice to break itself up. I guess the formatting would be now this one. So we ask the choice to break itself up, and the last line it returns, we need to keep that in memory, put a space after it, and continue with the next item in the sequence. Right? Right. So it's probably best to put things in lists, just so we know what the last line is. Okay. Let me. So I'm building up a string. I will make that a list, and I'll build it up from pieces, and then we will go for we will go through the items in the sequence, and we'll try to break up each of these items. So instead of this format for precedence, we'll call format lines. And we'll ask the item to format itself in the given columns. Might not be all the information it needs. Yeah, let's put that in a list, just so we can separate the last item from that list. Right. Then the first thing in that list will go to current line pieces. Let's do one thing. If there's just one element in returned, then let's append that to the current line. To the current line pieces, right? And that's all we need to do. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
otherwise, what we will do, so the first item from the list goes to current line pieces. Then we need to yield the line we have been building up. Oh. And reset it. Right. Then what I'd like to do is yield all the lines but the last. So we already handled the first part, so let's start with item number 1 here. Let's skip the last one. And then the very last piece goes to the new current line pieces, right? And at the very end, we yield the result. Does that look like a reasonable algorithm?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Sort of.
Hard to visualize, but
It is, yeah.
I think so.
So what did that give us? Let's look at the diffs here. So the try statement got this big choice split into several pieces, which looks pretty good, if you ask me.
Why does it change in the next one?
So what's the change in the next one? So in the next one, it got rid of the parentheses, which should have been there. So this is not correct. But that's because we are not really keeping track of the parentheses there. Yeah, the next one again, they were getting rid of parentheses. Bad. And that's it. But parameters is looking pretty good. So let's look at the lambda params. Let's look at the generated documentation for lambda params. Oh, that is actually almost what I had in the Scratch document, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's really cool.
Yeah, that looks exactly like that. So it's working, at least in some cases. That's encouraging. And we have lambda star etc. Okay, that's encouraging. Need to do something about the disappearing parentheses, but otherwise this looks pretty good. So star etc is looking good. Primary, oh yeah, that just lost some parentheses. Comp optimize bit pair, so this is a big choice and then a bitwise OR, which is now formatted pretty much as I would want it. Lambda params, that's good. Assignment, let's look at assignment in simple statements. Refresh. Excuse me?
Is that how it was before with this giant list and new ones?
Oh, this one? Yeah, that was there before already. I think that's fine.
Yeah, it's really fine.
I mean, this big thing only appears once in the grammar. But now as I was looking at the assignment here, So we have this choice of either this choice followed by some more stuff. Is that readable? I think it is.
What's the difference between a choice
Sure.
of a choice and something else, right? Isn't that just larger choice? Oh no, there's a sequence right now. I see.
There's something after this. How would you format this differently?
No, because like my brain, because the pipe and the parentheses are so similar on a small screen. I didn't even notice there was close parentheses.
True.
Like the screen, my screen isn't small, but the Discord streams are not full screen but full.
Um,
Now, what can we do
make
to
it full
help
screen.
them?
So I think the indentation helps actually. Right, because the first thing in this big line is an opening paren, and the last thing is a closing paren, and well, maybe when these things are next to each other, it's not that clear.
Is that how it's coded everywhere else in grammar? Like the pipes are aligned to the parentheses?
So in the actual grammar, there are no parentheses, but this is only done at the top level, and I don't think we can
So I would indent
get away with that.
pipes one level further. What I would do. So like they're not aligned with parentheses, so it's much more obvious when an option you're about to enter.
Okay, we can do that. That would be done in here.
Yeah, okay, that should help.
Let's give some less space there.
Okay.
Like this. Maybe the first paren should give one more space. Yeah, we should
Okay.
like that. Is that better?
I think it's a bit better, yeah, but like, what do you think, Blaze?
I don't know. Yeah, it does seem. It seems to scan like it's more chunky.
Yeah, it is a bit more. I guess verbose is not the word, but it's a bit longer.
Dense.
Dense, yes. I mean, it was. I'd argue it was denser before we, because now there's more discerning between pieces of information.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah, but it's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree at any point.
So code-wise, that's not a big change. So that's good. But so thinking about the algorithm here, that this doesn't really matter. So yeah, if it's better this way, let's do it this way. But what I'm looking at here is this. So we have assignment, which is this choice right here, then the colon expression, and then there's this part here. So what is that?
Ooh, I've got to drop for my next meeting. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much.
See you. Oh, I see. This is this branch here, and that for some reason that lost parentheses. Which is not that bad at this point, but why is this? Yeah, that's the problem. I didn't touch parentheses here at all. So yeah, previously this self format did the format for precedence, which adds parentheses when necessary. Here, the format lines doesn't really do that. So, well, oh, I didn't start the Discord event, did I? So we'll need to add that back later. But that's not really the problem here. The problem here is, why is this not split up? Oh, I know. Yeah. Okay. Right. So here the sequence asked. So that's the sequence here, right? It's a good thing that we have the diagram. We can make heads and tails of this, right? So this is a sequence, and the sequence asked each of its elements, of which there are two, like there's the breakpoint here, asked each of its elements to format itself in the available space, which this part did and that part did, and each yielded only a single line. So the sequence then went, okay, so I'll just get this and put a space between them and then put that. But instead, we'd like to have this like choice split into several lines. Right. So if I do something like, if I do something like take columns and divide that by 2 here. Oh.
Does it just work?
Well, I mean, this is this looks like checkers.
Yeah.
That's like a chessboard. With differently curved lines. Like, yeah, that's.
We're not dealing with grammar anymore. This is curved space-time.
So
How do we do? I'm a programmer, not a graphic designer.
Yeah. How would this work if we designed this? So what do we have here? We have a big choice here, right? This is item number 1, or this is item number 1, and this is item number 2. The item number 1 was pretty good. All right, it's this sub choice and something tacked at the end, and then here we have like one choice followed by another choice. So maybe it should look like this a bit, or maybe even this choice. Yeah, this choice doesn't really have to be.
Yeah, I agree with this.
Have to be split. Oh, Whew. Hmm, hmm, hmm.
It is as complicated.
It is. But yeah, how does this part know that it shouldn't be split up?
Are you splitting all choices unconditionally?
I'm splitting everything unconditionally. So no, I'm splitting it based on however much space is left, or however much space I have. And I guess one part of the problem is that like there's less space on the first line than in the rest. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so so this algorithm doesn't really work. And let me think about.
I wouldn't throw it all away.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw it away, but we need something a bit more clever. So
Our formatting standard is a problem. Like maybe we should try formatting it somehow, some other way.
what other way?
Actually, I don't know. But like I'm throwing an idea out there. Maybe we're trying to accomplish something that's harder than it should be.
Maybe, but maybe we're just not. Maybe we're just not.
Sorry, but I gotta go
I think
now.
correctly. You do. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. I'll think about it. This is an interesting problem.
Alright, we'll see you both next week.
Yeah, in 2 weeks I'll be away next week,
2 weeks. Wait.
so lots of time to think about it. See you.